The Lady of the Lake, by Sir Walter Scott. Canto 3rd. The Gathering. Time rolls his ceaseless course. The race of yore, who danced our infancy upon their knee, and told our marveling boyhood legends store, of their strange ventures happed by land or sea. How are they blotted from the things that be? How few, all weak and withered of their force, wait on the verge of dark eternity, like stranded wrecks, the tide returning hoarse, to sweep them from out sight. Time rolls his ceaseless course. Yet live there still who can remember well, how, when a mountain chief his bugle blew, both field and forest, dingle, cliff and dell, and solitary heath, the signal knew, and fast the faithful clan around him drew. What time the warning note was keenly wound, what time aloft their kindred banner flew, while clamorous war pipes yelled the gathering sound, and while the fiery cross glanced like a meteor, round the summer dawn's reflected hue, to purple changed Loch Katrine blue. Mildly and soft the western breeze just kissed the lake, just stirred the trees, and the pleased lake, like maiden coy, trembled but dimpled not for joy. The mountain shadows on her breast were neither broken nor at rest. In bright uncertainty they lie, like future joys to fancy's eye. The water lily to the light, her chalice reared of silver bright. The doe awoke, and to the lawn, begemmed with dew drops, led her fawn. The grey mist left the mountain side. The torrent showed its glistening pride. Invisible in flecked sky the lark sent clown her revelry. The blackbird and the speckled thrush good morrow gave from brake and bush. In answer cooed the cushat dove, her notes of peace and rest and love. No thought of peace, no thought of rest, assuaged the storm in Roderick's breast. With sheathed broadsword in his hand, abrupt he paced the islet strand, and eyed the rising sun, and laid his hand on his impatient blade. Beneath a rock, his vassal's care was prompt the ritual to prepare, with deep and deathful meaning fraught, for such antiquity had taught, was preface meet, ere yet abroad the cross of fire should take its road. The shrinking band stood oft aghast at the impatient glance he cast, such glance the mountain eagle threw, as, from the cliffs of Benvenue, she spread her dark sails on the wind, and, high in middle heaven reclined, with her broad shadow on the lake, silenced the warblers of the brake. Ivy, a heap of withered boughs was piled, of juniper and rowan wild, mingled with shivers from the oak, rent by the lightning's recent stroke. Brian the hermit by it stood, barefooted, in his frock and hood, his grizzled beard and matted hair obscured a visage of despair. His naked arms and legs seemed o'er the scars of frantic penance bore. That monk, of savage form and face, the impending danger of his race, had drawn from deepest solitude, far in Benharrow's bosom rude. Not his the mien of Christian priest, but Druid's, from the grave released, whose hardened heart and eye might brook on human sacrifice to look. And much, tea was said, of heathen lore, mixed in the charms he muttered o'er. The hallowed creed gave only worse, and deadlier emphasis of curse. No peasant sought that hermit's prayer, his cave the pilgrim shunned with care. The eager huntsman knew his bound, and in mid-chase called off his hound. Or if, in lonely glen or strath, the desert dweller met his path, he prayed, and signed the cross between, while terror took devotion's mien. Of Brian's birth strange tales were told. His mother watched a midnight fold, built deep within a dreary glen, where scattered lay the bones of men, in some forgotten battle slain, and bleached by drifting wind and rain. It might have tamed a warrior's heart, to view such mockery of his art. The knot grass fettered there the hand, which once could burst an iron band, beneath the broad and ample bone, that bucklered heart to fear unknown. A feeble and a timorous guest, the fieldfare framed her lowly nest. There the slow blind worm left his slime on the fleet limbs that mocked at time, and there, too, lay the leader's skull, still wreathed with chaplet, flushed and full, for Heath Bell with her purple bloom supplied the bonnet and the plume. All night, in this sad glen the maid sat shrouded in her mantle's shade. She said no shepherd sought her side, No hunter's hand her snood untied, yet ne'er again to braid her hair the virgin snood did alive wear. Gone was her maiden glee and sport, her maiden girdle all too short. Nor sought she, from that fatal night, or holy church or blessed rite, but locked her secret in her breast, and died in travail, unconfessed. Alone, among his young compeers, was Brian from his infant years, a moody and heartbroken boy, estranged from sympathy and joy, bearing each taunt which careless tongue on his mysterious lineage flung. Whole nights he spent by moonlight pale, to wood and stream his teal, to wail, till, frantic, he as truth received what of his birth the crowd believed, and sought, in mist and meteor fire, to meet and know his phantom sire. In vain, to soothe his wayward fate, the cloister oped her pitying gate. In vain the learning of the age unclasped the sable-lettered page. Even in its treasures he could find food for the fever of his mind. Eager he read whatever tells of magic, Kabbalah, and spells, and every dark pursuit allied to curious and presumptuous pride, till with fired brain and nerves o'erstrung, and heart with mystic horrors wrung, desperate he sought Ben-Harrow's den, and hid him from the haunts of men. The desert gave him visions wild, such as might suit the spectre's child, where with black cliffs the torrents toil. He watched the wheeling eddies boil, Jill from their foam his dazzled eyes beheld the river demon rise. The mountain mist took form and limb of noontide hag or goblin grim. The midnight wind came wild and dread, swelled with the voices of the dead. Far on the future battle heath, his eye beheld the ranks of death. Thus the lone seer, from mankind hurled, shaped forth a disembodied world. One lingering sympathy of mind still bound him to the mortal kind. The only parent he could claim of ancient Alpine's lineage came. Late had he heard, in prophet's dream, the fatal Ben-She's boding scream. Sounds, too, had come in midnight blast of charging steeds, careering fast along Ben-Harrow's shingly side, where mortal horseman ne'er might ride. The thunderbolt had split the pine, all augured ill to Alpine's line. He girt his loins, and came to show the signals of impending woe, and now stood prompt to bless or ban, as bade the chieftain of his clan. Tea was all prepared, and from the rock, a goat, the patriarch of the flock, before the kindling pile was laid, and pierced by Roderick's ready blade. Patient the sickening victim eyed, the life-blood ebb in crimson tide, down his clogged beard and shaggy limb, till darkness glazed his eyeballs dim. The grisly priest, with murmuring prayer, a slender crosslet framed with care, a cubit's length in measure due, the shaft and limbs were rods of yew, whose parents in inch-caleic wave their shadows o'er clan Alpine's grave, and, answering Lowman's breezes deep, soothe many a chieftain's endless sleep. The cross thus formed he held on high, with wasted hand and haggard eye, and strange and mingled feelings woke, while his anathema he spoke. Woe to the clansman who shall view this symbol of sepulchral yew, forgetful that its branches grew where weep the heavens their holiest dew. On Alpine's dwelling low, deserter of his chieftain's trust, he ne'er shall mingle with their dust, but, from his sires and kindred thrust, each clansman's execration just shall doom him wrath and woe. He paused, the word the vassals took, with forward step and fiery look. On high their naked brands they shook, their clattering targets wildly struck, and first in murmur low, then like the billow in his course, that far to seaward finds his source, and flings to shore his mustered force, burst with loud roar their answer hoarse. Woe to the traitor, woe! Ben-An's grey scalp the accents knew, the joyous wolf from covert drew, the exulting eagle screamed afar, they knew the voice of Alpine's war. The shout was hushed on lake and fell, the monk resumed his muttered spell, dismal and low its accents came, the while he scathed the cross with flame, and the few words that reached the air, although the holiest name was there, had more of blasphemy than prayer. But when he shook above the crowd its kindled points, he spoke aloud. Woe to the wretch who fails to rear at this dread sign the ready spear, for, as the flames this symbol sear. His home, the refuge of his fear, a kindred fate shall know. Far o'er its roof the volumed flame, Clan Alpine's vengeance shall proclaim, while maids and matrons on his name shall call down wretchedness and shame, and infamy and woe. Then rose the cry of females, shrill, as goshawks whistle on the hill, denouncing misery and ill, mingled with childhood's babbling trill, of curses stammered slow, answering with imprecation dread. Sunk be his home in embers red, and cursed be the meanest shed, that o'er shall hide the houseless head. We doomed to want and woe. A sharp and shrieking echo gave, Quoia Euriscan, thy goblin cave, and the grey pass where birches wave, on Bela Nam bow. Then deeper paused the priest anew, and hard his labouring breath he drew, while, with set teeth and clenched hand, and eyes that glowed like fiery brand, he meditated curse more dread, and deadlier, on the clansman's head, who, summoned to his chieftain's aid, the signal saw and disobeyed. The crosslets' points of sparkling wood he quenched among the bubbling blood, and, as again the sign he reared, hollow and hoarse his voice was heard, when flits this cross from man to man, which Alpine's summons to his clan. Burst be the ear that fails to heed, palsied the foot that shuns to speed. May ravens tear the careless eyes, wolves make the coward heart their prize. As sinks that blood stream in the earth, so may his heart's blood drench his hearth. As dies in hissing gore the spark, quench thou his light, destruction dark, and be the grace to him denied. Brought by this sign to all beside, he ceased, no echo gave again the murmur of the deep Amen. Then Roderick with impatient look, from Brian's hand the symbol took. Speed, Malise, speed, he said, and gave the crosslet to his henchman brave. The muster place be Lanrick Mead. Instant the time, speed, Malise, speed. Like heathbird, when the hawks pursue, a barge across Loch Katrine flew. High stood the henchman on the prow, so rapidly the barge maul row. The bubbles, where they launched the boat, were all unbroken and afloat, dancing in foam and ripple still, when it had neared the mainland hill. And from the silver beach's side, still was the prow 3 fathom wide, when lightly bounded to the land, the messenger of blood and brand. Speed, Malise, speed. The dun deer's hide, on fleeter foot was never tied. Speed, Malise, speed. Such cause of haste, thine active sinews never braced. Bend 'gainst the steepy hill thy breast, burst down like torrent from its crest, with short and springing footstep pass the trembling bog and false morass, across the brook like roebuck bound, and thread the brake like questing hound. The crag is high, the score is deep, yet shrink not from the desperate leap. Parched are thy burning lips and brow, yet by the fountain pause not now. Herald of battle, fate, and fear, stretch onward in thy fleet career. The wounded hind thou track'st not now, pursuest not maid through greenwood bough, nor priest thou now thy flying pace with rivals in the mountain race. But danger, death, and warrior deed are in thy course. Speed, Malise, speed. Fast as the fatal symbol flies, in arms the huts and hamlets rise. From winding glen, from upland brown, they poured each hardy tenant down, nor slacked the messenger his pace. He showed the sign, he named the place, and, pressing forward like the wind, left clamour and surprise behind. The fisherman forsook the strand, the swarthy smith took dirk and brand. With changed cheer, the mower blithe left in the half-cut swath his scythe. The herds without a keeper strayed, the plough was in mid-furrow staved. The falconer tossed his hawk away, the hunter left the stag at hay. Prompt at the signal of alarms, each son of Alpine rushed to arms. So swept the tumult and affray along the margin of Acre. Alas, thou lovely lake, that ere thy banks should echo sounds of fear, the rocks, the bosky thickets, sleep so stilly on thy bosom deep. The lark's blithe carol from the cloud seems for the scene too gaily loud. Speed, Malise, speed. The lake is past, Duncraggan's huts appear at last, and peep, like moss-grown rocks, half seen, half hidden in the copse so green. There mayst thou rest, thy labour done. Their lord shall speed the signal on, as stoops the hawk upon his prey. The henchman shot him down the way. What woeful accents load the gale! The funeral yell, the female wail. A gallant hunter's sport is o'er. A valiant warrior fights no more. Who, in the battle or the chase, at Roderick's side shall fill his place. Within the hall, where torches ray supplies the excluded beams of day, lies Duncan on his lowly bier, and o'er him streams his widow's tear. His stripling son stands mournful by. His youngest weeps, but knows not why. The village maids and matrons round the dismal coronach resound. Coronach, he is gone on the mountain. He is lost to the forest, like a summer-dried fountain, when our need was the sorest. The font, reappearing, from the raindrops shall borrow, but to us comes no cheering. To Duncan no morrow. The hand of the reaper takes the ears that are hoary, but the voice of the weeper wails manhood in glory. The autumn winds rushing waft the leaves that are searest, but our flower was in flushing, when blighting was nearest. Fleet foot on the corrie, sage counsel in cumber, red hand in the foray. How sound is thy slumber! Like the dew on the mountain, like the foam on the river, like the bubble on the fountain. Thou art gone, and forever. See Stuma, who, the bier beside, his master's corpse with wonder eyed. Poor Stuma, whom his least halloo could send like lightning o'er the dew, bristles his crest, and points his ears, as if some stranger step he hears. 'Tis not a mourner's muffled tread, who comes to sorrow o'er the dead, but headlong haste or deadly fear urge the precipitate career. All stand aghast, unheeding all. The henchman bursts into the hall. Before the dead man's bier he stood, held forth the cross besmeared with blood. The muster place is Lanrick Mead. Speed forth the signal, clansmen, speed. Angus, the heir of Duncan's line, sprung forth and seized the fatal sign. In haste the stripling to his side, his father's dirk and broadsword tied. But when he saw his mother's eye watch him in speechless agony, back to her opened arms he flew, pressed on her lips a fond adieu. Alas, she sobbed, and yet be gone, and speed thee forth, like Duncan's son. One look he cast upon the bier, dashed from his eye the gathering tear, breathed deep to clear his labouring breast, and tossed aloft his bonnet crest. Then, like the high-bred colt when, freed, first he essays his fire and speed, he vanished, and o'er moor and moss sped forward with the fiery cross. Suspended was the widow's tear, while yet his footsteps she could hear, and when she marked the henchman's eye, wet with unwonted sympathy. Kinsman, she said, his race is run, that should have sped thine errand on. The oak tree's fallen, the sapling bough is all Duncragan's shelter now, yet trust I well, his duty done. The orphan's God will guard my son, and you, in many a danger true, at Duncan's hest your blades that drew to arms, and guard that orphan's head. Let babes and women wail the dead. Then weapon clang and martial call resounded through the funeral hall, while from the walls the attendant band snatched sword and targe with hurried hand, and short and flitting energy glanced from the mourner's sunken eye, as if the sounds to warrior dear might rouse her Duncan from his bier. But faded soon that borrowed force. Grief claimed his right, and tears their course. Benledi saw the cross of fire. It glanced like lightning up Strathire. O'er dale and hill the summons flew. Nor rest nor pause young Angus knew. The tear that gathered in his eye, he deft the mountain breeze to dry, until, where Teith's young waters roll, betwixt him and a wooded knoll, that graced the sable strath with green, the chapel of St. Bride was seen. Swoln was the stream, remote the bridge, but Angus paused not on the edge, though the Clark waves danced dizzily, though reeled his sympathetic eye. He dashed amid the torrent's roar, his right hand high the crosslet bore, his left the pole-axe grasped, to guide and stay his footing in the tide. He stumbled twice, the foam splashed high, with hoarser swell the stream raced by, and had he fallen, forever there. Farewell Duncragan's orphan heir, but still, as if in parting life, firmer he grasped the cross of strife. until the opposing bank he gained, and up the chapel pathway strained, a blithesome route that morning tide had sought the chapel of Saint Bride. Her troth Tomby's Mary gave to Norman, heir of Armand Avenue, and, issuing from the Gothic arch, the bridal now resumed their march. In rude but glad procession came bonneted sire and coif-clad dame, and plaided youth, with jest and jeer, which snooded maiden would not hear, and children, that, unwitting why, lent the gay shout their shrilly cry, and minstrels, that in measures vied, before the young and bonny bride, whose downcast eye and cheek disclose the tear and blush of morning rose. With virgin step and bashful hand, she held the kerchief's snowy band. The gallant bridegroom by her side beheld his prize with victor's pride, and the glad mother in her ear was closely whispering word of cheer. Who meets them at the churchyard gate? The messenger of fear and fate. Haste in his hurried accent lies, and grief is swimming in his eyes. All dripping from the recent flood, panting and travel-soiled he stood, the fatal sign of fire and sword held forth, and spoke the appointed word. The muster place is Lanrick Mead. Speed forth the signal, Norman, speed. And must he change so soon the hand, just linked to his by holy band, for the fell cross of blood and brand? And must the day so blithe that rose, and promised rapture in the close, before its setting hour, divide the bridegroom from the plighted bride? O fatal doom, it must, Clan Alpine's cause, her chieftain's trust, her summons dread, brook no delay, stretch to the race, away, away. Yet slow he laid his plaid aside, and lingering eyed his lovely bride, until he saw the starting tear. Speak woe he might not stop to cheer. Then, trusting not a second look, in haste he sped hind up the brook, nor backward glanced till on the heath, where Lubnaig's lake supplies the teeth. What in the race's bosom stirred the sickening pang of hope deferred, and memory with a torturing train of all his morning visions vain, mingled with love's impatience, came the manly thirst for martial fame, the stormy joy of mountaineers, ere yet they rush upon the spears, and zeal for clan and chieftain burning, and hope, from well-fought field returning, with war's red honours on his crest, to clasp his Mary to his breast. Stung by such thoughts, o'er bank and brae, like fire from flint he glanced away, while high resolve and feeling strong burst into voluntary song. Song. The heath this night must be my bed, the bracken curtain for my head, my lullaby the warder's tread. Far, far, from love and thee, Mary. Tomorrow eve, more stilly laid, my couch may be my bloody plaid, my vesper song thy wail, sweet maid. It will not waken me, Mary. I may not, dare not, fancy now the grief that clouds thy lovely brow. I dare not think upon thy vow, and all it promised me, Mary. No fond regret must Norman know, when bursts Clan Alpine on the foe. His heart must be like bended bow, his foot like arrow free, Mary. A time will come with feeling fraught, for, if I fall in battle fought, thy hapless lover's dying thought shall be a thought on thee, Mary. And if returned from conquered foes, how blithely will the evening close, how sweet the linnet sing repose, to my young bride and me, Mary. Not faster o'er thy heathery braes, Balquhidder, speeds the midnight blaze, rushing in conflagration strong, thy deep ravines and dells along, wrapping thy cliffs in purple glow, and reddening the dark lakes below. Nor faster speeds it, nor so far, as o'er thy heaths the voice of war, the signal roused to martial coil, the sullen margin of Loch Voil, waked still Loch Doine, and to the source, alarmed, Balvaig, thy swampy course, thence southward turned its rapid road, down Strathgartney's valley broad, till rose in arms each man might claim a portion in Clan Alpine's name, from the grey sire, whose trembling hand could hardly buckle on his brand, to the raw boy, whose shaft and bow were yet scarce terror to the crow. Each valley, each sequestered glen, mustered its little horde of men, that met his torrents from the height. In Highland dales their streams unite, still gathering, as they pour along. A voice more loud, a tide more strong, till at the rendezvous they stood, by hundreds prompt for blows and blood, each trained to arms since life began, owning no tie but to his clan, no oath but by his chieftain's hand, no law but Roderick Dhu's command. That summer morn had Roderick Dhu surveyed the skirts of Benvenue, and sent his scouts o'er hill and heath, to view the frontiers of Menteith. All backward came with news of truce. Still lay each Marshal Graeme and Bruce. In Redknop courts no horsemen wait, no banner waved on Cardross gate, on Ducrie's towers no beacon shone, nor scared the herons from Loch Con. All seemed at peace. Now wot ye wily, the chieftain with such anxious eye, ere to the muster he repair, this western frontier scanned with care. In Benvenue's most darksome cleft, a fair though cruel pledge was left, for Douglas, to his promise true, that morning from the isle withdrew, and in a deep sequestered dell, had sought a low and lonely cell, by many a bard in Celtic tongue, has Quoia nan Euriscan been sung. A softer name the Saxons gave, and called the grot the Goblin Cave. It was a wild and strange retreat, as e'er was trod by outlaws' feet. The dell, upon the mountain's crest, yawned like a gash on warrior's breast. Its trench had stayed full many a rock, hurled by primeval earthquake shock, from Benvenue's grey summit wild, and here, in random ruin piled, they frowned incumbent o'er the spot, and formed the rugged sylvan rot, the oak and birch with mingled shade. At noontide there a twilight made, unless when short and sudden shone some straggling beam on cliff or stone. With such a glimpse is prophet's eye, gains on thy depth, futurity. No murmur waked the solemn still, save tinkling of a fountain rill. But when the wind chafed with the lake, a sullen sound would upward break, with dashing hollow voice, that spoke the incessant war of wave and rock. Suspended cliffs with hideous sway seemed nodding o'er the cavern grey. From such a den the wolf had sprung, in such the wild cat leaves her young. Yet Douglas and his daughter fair sought for a space their safety there. Grey superstitions whisper dread, debarred the spot to vulgar tread. For there, she said, did fays resort, and satyrs hold their sylvan court, by moonlight tread their mystic maze, and blast the rash beholder's gaze. Now eve, with western shadows long, floated on Katrine bright and strong, when Roderick with a chosen few repassed the heights of Benvenue. Above the Goblin Cave they go, through the wild pass of Beal Nam Bow. The prompt retainers speed before, to launch the shallop from the shore, for cross Loch Katrine lies his way, to view the passes of Acre, and place his clansmen in array. Yet lags the chief in musing mind, unwanted sight, his men behind, a single page, to bear his sword, alone attended on his lord. The rest their way through thickets break, and soon await him by the lake. It was a fair and gallant sight, to view them from the neighbouring height, by the low-levelled sunbeam's light. For strength and stature, from the clan, each warrior was a chosen man, as even afar might well be seen, by their proud step and martial mien. Their feathers dance, their tartars float, their targets gleam, as by the boat. A wild and warlike group they stand, that well became such mountain strand. Their chief with step reluctant still, was lingering on the craggy hill, hard by where turned apart the road, to Douglas's obscure abode. It was but with that dawning morn, that Roderick Dhu had proudly sworn, to drown his love in war's wild roar, nor think of Ellen Douglas more. But he who stems a stream with sand, and fetters flame with flaxen band, has yet a harder task to prove, by firm resolve to conquer love. Eve finds the chief, like restless ghost, still hovering near his treasure lost. For though his haughty heart deny a parting meeting to his eye, still fondly strains his anxious ear the accents of her voice to hear, and inly did he curse the breeze that waked to sound the rustling trees. But hark, what mingles in the strain? It is the harp of Allan Bane, that wakes its measure slow and high, attuned to sacred minstrelsy. What melting voice attends the strings? 'Tis Ellen, or an angel, sings. Hymn to the Virgin. Avenue. Maria, maiden mild, listen to a maiden's prayer. Thou canst hear though from the wild. Thou canst save amid despair. Safe may we sleep beneath thy care, though banished, outcast and reviled. Maiden, hear a maiden's prayer. Mother, hear a suppliant child. Ave Maria, Ave Maria, undefiled. The flinty couch we now must share shall seem with down of Ida piled. If thy protection hover there, the murky cavern's heavy air shall breathe of balm if thou hast smiled. Then, maiden, hear a maiden's prayer. Mother, list a suppliant child. Ave Maria. Avenue. Maria, stainless styled. Foul demons of the earth and air, from this their wonted haunt exiled, shall flee before thy presence fair. We bow us to our lot of care, beneath thy guidance reconciled. Hear for a maid a maiden's prayer, and for a father hear a child. Died on the harp the closing hymn, unmoved in attitude and limb, as listening still, Clan Alpine's lord stood leaning on his heavy sword, until the page with humble sign twice pointed to the sun's decline. Then while his plaid he round him cast, it is the last time, 'tis the last. He muttered thrice, the last time ere that angel voice shall Roderick hear. It was a goading thought, his stride hied hastier down the mountainside. Sullen he flung him in the boat. An instant, cross the lake it shot. They landed in that silvery bay, and eastward held their hasty way, till, with the latest beams of light, the band arrived on Lanrick height, where mustered in the vale below Clan Alpine's men in martial show. A various scene the clansmen made. Some sat, some stood, some slowly strayed, but most, with mantles folded round, were couched to rest upon the ground, scarce to be known by curious eye, from the deep heather where they lie. So well was matched the tartan screen, with heath bell dark and brackens green, unless where, here and there, a blade, or lance's point a glimmer made, like glowworm twinkling through the shade. But when, advancing through the gloom, they saw the chieftain's eagle plume, their shout of welcome, shrill and wide, shook the steep mountain's steady side. Thrice it arose, and lake and fell. 3 times returned the martial yell. It died upon Bochastle's plain, and silence claimed her evening reign.